In the meantime, joining me now is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the founder and co-chair of the House Syria caucus. Congressman, we've got a lot to talk about today. And just so our audience is clear, you have criticized what the president said on the phone to the leader of Ukraine. I just want to get that out there. But the president and his defenders call the phone call perfect and say he has the absolute right to request an investigation of the Bidens. If that's the case, why then block Ambassador Sondland's testimony?
Yeah, I don't know. This is obviously all just happening, so I don't have any rationale or reasoning. I typically believe, whether it was President Obama or President Trump, that you should do in front of Congress what Congress asks, unless there's a legitimate reason not to. That said, yeah, I think, look, the call was inappropriate, but there's a lot of questions that are still out there, and that's where, and I think Democrats made a big mistake by, instead of just inquiring about what happened, they automatically went with impeachment inquiry, and that has a whole different meaning behind it.
We'll get to that in just a second, but you think Ambassador Sondland should be testifying today?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard the reasoning for not, but yeah, typically, anytime I think somebody from the administration is called in front of a committee, they should come testify, and especially on something like this. And if the White House would think this would help exonerate them, bring them in.
Ambassador Sondland reportedly told Senator Ron Johnson that military aid was tied to these investigations of the Bidens in the election. So what questions, and you're not part of these committees, but what questions would you ask Ambassador Sondland if you had a chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd want to know what information he had. You know, it's one thing to say, hey, can you tell us and investigate the Bidens or any political opponent? You know, keep in mind, and I tell this to my Republican friends, there will be a Democratic president again someday, and we don't want to give that president license to do the same thing, if whatever that is. So that's number one. Number two is there evidence that military aid was withheld as a contingent for getting this information? And if that's the case, that's a whole new level of issues and concerns. I remember back in the summer finding out, I'm literally sitting in a Foreign Affairs Committee and finding out that this aid was being held back, and we didn't know why. And obviously it was released before the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, there's legitimate questions there. Again, the problem is, though, the Democrats started calling it an impeachment inquiry.
I understand.
And that has a whole different level of things.
I understand. I just want to be clear, though, so that maybe your Republican colleagues can understand, because you keep on saying it's wrong for the president to ask the Ukrainian leader to investigate the Bidens. Why is it wrong?
Well, it's wrong, and that's different than saying it's impeachable. That's a different question. But it's wrong because I think no foreign government should have any interference in our election system. So if there's legitimate information about corruption and American government corruption, that's one thing. But when it's focused on somebody that's running in a presidential election, literally it would be like, let's say, President Obama in 2015 calling somebody and asking about what one of the Trump sons is doing so that he can use it to discredit or whatever. We'd be outraged about that. So I'm just trying to be consistent, which is, let's leave American domestic elections in the United States of America. We're not a banana republic where every empire can come in and make a change in our election. We are the United States of America, and we have to put up a firewall from outside interference, no matter who.
So you've criticized the Democrats for launching the impeachment inquiry, and you flat out said that you think this is wrong but not impeachable. What then is impeachable? What's the bar for you?
Well, I don't, I mean, that's, there's no actually definitive thing. It's high crimes and misdemeanors. It's really ultimately, as we all know, a political question. So that's where, the process is figuring out. If Democrats decide this is impeachable, then it's impeachable because that's their decision to make. For me, as I have to look at this decision, talking to the Ukrainians and saying, give us information on Biden in and of itself is not impeachable. What else comes out, who knows? But, yeah, it's a decision everybody has to make.
I want to ask you about Syria. This has been a big concern of yours for some time, and the president yesterday announced the withdrawal of troops from the northern Syria border, which would allow Turkey to move in. You're very concerned about the message that this sends now and in the future to U.S. allies. Why?
So it's two things. Think of every time we've been in battle and we've left our allies behind and they've gotten slaughtered. Even the Kurds, by the way, after 1991. We had a whole northern no-fly zone set up after they were basically slaughtered by Saddam Hussein because we encouraged them to rise up and then didn't step in. So you think about that. Look at, the translators in Afghanistan that we promised visas to if they worked with us that are still now hiding from the Taliban because we can't get them here. So this would be another mix in that. The other thing is this, though. You know, people like Rand Paul constantly say, we don't want 100,000 troops in Syria. I don't either. Okay, this is exactly the model that we should be implementing for future kind of fights like this. A few hundred troops using local forces to fight the battle so we don't have to. And then to look at that, a special forces operation mainly with 1,000 troops and say it's an endless war is disingenuous. And it's like when your grandma always looks at you and tells you you're tired, you're tired, you're tired, you eventually feel tired. That's what's happening when, whether it's any president or any leader says, we're tired of these endless wars, we're sick of them. Eventually people feel that way because they need leadership to come and tell them what the reason for this fight is.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, as always, thank you for being with us this morning.
You bet.